Now, it's something we all do. That is a fact. But have you ever thought about how often you do it, if you're doing it right, and if you might want to change up your technique? I'm talking about breathing. Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens is with me. She tells me there's different types of breathing. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
I never thought too much about how I breathe, but there are different ways of breathing and they bring different benefits. Is that right?
That is absolutely true. So there's our stock standard breathing, which let's hope we're all doing that at the moment. But the nice thing is that there's other ways of adopting breathing habits that can bring us both physical and mental benefits, and quite a range of those. We can talk about a couple of those if you'd like to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so one of the first ones is called diaphragmatic breathing, which is basically your diaphragm sits pretty much in the centre of your chest as a rough location for where it sits. And when you do breathing through your diaphragm, and if you think about it, to get oxygen down there, you've got to breathe a little bit deeper maybe than what you do typically. But what we know is that as you strengthen the diaphragm, that helps you get more oxygen into your body and really reduces some of your stress because it increases that relaxation response. One of the breathing techniques that I really like, because we've borrowed it from our amazing defence personnel, is called box breathing. In the defence, they call it combat breathing.
Okay.
But it's one of the same. And basically, it's got 4 stages of breathing within it, which is the inhale and the exhale. But either side of that is a pause. So if you can imagine it, you inhale and then you pause for an equal amount of time, then you exhale and you pause. Now, in a military setting, it's during the pause that they might discharge a weapon, those sorts of moments, so they haven't got their breathing affecting
things.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's something that we can use. And the main thing with it for us to think about is that you make all 4 elements of that exactly the same amount of time. So if it's, say, 2 or 3 seconds, some people do it for 4. I get a bit dizzy if I go for 4 seconds. So the main thing with it is that you make it regulated, and that act of slowing it down, paying attention, concentrating on our breathing, which, like you said before, we don't often do that, but just by doing that has a benefit in addition to the benefits we then get from the oxygen going into our lungs.
So how does pursed lips breathing help with anxiety?
Yes, so this slows our breathing down. So the way that this particular style of breathing works is you breathe in through your nose, and then if you can imagine, you purse your lips, almost as if you're puckering up in some ways, would be one way to describe it. But as you breathe in through your nose, but you purse your lips and you breathe out through those pursed lips, which kind of narrows, if you think about it, quite a lot of oxygen's coming in through your nose because our nostrils are quite wide, and then as we breathe it out, it's a little harder for the breath to get out. So what we're doing there is you have to breathe slowly, and generally you tend to exhale quite slowly. And what that does is, again, reduces that stress response and increases our sense of relaxation.
Okay. It's all things that we can probably relate to doing, but not really maybe understanding why we do them.
Yeah, and that's one of the things is we kind of work out what we need. But if we know a couple of these strategies, then we can employ them a little bit earlier. And what we know is our early responses to stress, the earlier we can get onto it, the less likely we're going to get quite overwhelmed.
Spiral,
So they're good little techniques to use. So, I have some little habits about when I bring in some of these breathing techniques, and they definitely help.
Yeah. You're hearing from psychology consultant Dr. Jo Lukens. So can you talk us through the benefits of cyclic sighing compared to some of the other breathing techniques?
Yes. So this one, when I explain it, everyone will go, oh, I know what that is.
Okay.
So what happens is when we sigh, and I'm not going to do it on air because it's just going to sound weird, but maybe if everyone else who's listening would like to let out a big sigh, but it's quite a forceful exhalation of the air. So what that does for us is they're longer exhalations, and so that really gives a sense of relief or calm. Now, I know sometimes we sigh because we're a little annoyed or we're a little frustrated, but if you think about it, yes, there it was. There we go. So when you think about when we do it, we're doing it to slow ourselves down, calm ourselves down. One of the things that's really nice with a sigh, depending on how evident it is to the person who might be around us, is it does give us a little bit of time. So this is one of those scenarios where it can help us from a psychological point of view, that maybe it gets us closer to responding to a situation rather than reacting to a situation. So I am very good at cyclic sighing around my children. But they do know that when it's a big sigh from mum, probably worth scattering.
There's one thing I realise that I do. I sigh when I've finished something.
Yes.
And then sometimes people say, are you okay? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm just finished. And I'm breathing out and then going, that's done. Now I'm moving on to this.
And the point that you make there, Susan, is great because it's like a reset point. You just said this is finished. And if you watch sporting teams now, so many of the sporting teams, at moments when there's a break in play in sport and so forth, you'll see them standing together and doing some breathing together. And it forms both, it's a point of connection, it's a point of slowing down, and then it's that sense of we've just finished what we're doing, we're moving on to something else.
So let's talk about caution in this area because we all breathe, hopefully, but you mentioned earlier that sometimes you get a bit dizzy with some of the bits and pieces. So what sort of caution should we be taking if we are trying to work on some of these breathing techniques?
I think one of them is just to be aware. So, for example, box breathing is often recommended that it's 4 seconds. If that's too much for you and it makes you dizzy, like it is for me, do it for 3 seconds. So use some wisdom there. There's also some other breathing techniques, and they've become a bit popular of late, where you can go and it's extended breathing activities, like an hour and a half. It's a guided kind of breathing activity. Sometimes that's referred to as holotropic breath work. And it's designed to explore some of the things that people might have gone through earlier in their lives, trauma and so forth. And I just have come across instances where if someone who's not expert in that, it can unravel for people pretty quickly. Yeah. And so all I would say is that if you're using breathing as an intervention, make sure the person that's taking you through the journey is experienced and qualified to deal with whatever it is that they're promising that you do. It's become a little bit trendy in a few areas, and I have a little bit of caution about it because for some people that doesn't work so well. So as with any therapeutic intervention, if that's how you're using breathing, just make sure you're in the hands of someone who's expert.
Who's got a skill in that area. Yes, who would have thought? Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens, thank you very much for your time today.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you. You are on ABC Queensland.